Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters. I'm your host Mitch, glad to have you here. Here at the Commander's Quarters, we're all about Commander on a budget. Today we have another episode of Shiny New Quarters, and this is going to be a reprints edition. Last time I went through my favorite new budget cards in the upcoming set, but outside of new cards, there are also some exciting reprints that are now budget. A quick reminder that in order for a card to be considered for one of these episodes, it has to be under $1. This show and episodes like this one are possible because of viewers like you. So if you're looking for some easy ways to help support the show, make sure you like this episode and share it with friends. And make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Thank you to everyone who's already purchased our merchandise, it really does help support the channel. Another easy way to support this channel is by using our TCG Player affiliate links. So make sure that you're looking for those links in the description whenever you're buying a deck or just individual cards. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support. I just want to make a quick disclaimer before we get started. These picks are completely based off of my own opinions, and by the time the set releases, the prices of these cards and others are definitely going to change. At the time of this recording, each of these cards was less than $1, and there are certain cards that might be over budget right now, but might not be by the time this episode comes out. But since I can't predict the future, obviously those cards couldn't be considered for this list. And now that we're on the same page, let's get into it. My first shiny new quarter coming in at 10th place is Goblin Matron. Goblin Matron is a 1/1 goblin for 2 and a red. When it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a goblin card, reveal that card, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. This is a fantastic tutor in any goblin deck. There are plenty of tribes out there that would really like to have a card like this, and goblins are lucky that they have one. Being able to find the perfect goblin for the right situation can be huge. You can use this card to help you set up your board with something like Siege Gang Commander, or you can find something like Skirk Prospector to really go off in a turn. And since this ability is on a creature, you can find ways to abuse that enter the battlefield trigger. So it's a pretty popular inclusion for a lot of goblin decks for obvious reasons. As of recently, and before Modern Horizons came out, its price was right around $1. This made it pretty difficult to include in budget decks, including my Krenko Mob Boss deck. I'm happy to say though that with this reprint, its price is now around 19 cents. That's very much a budget price and an easy include in any goblin deck that wants it. Now obviously this is a very specific reprint and it's not intended for every red deck, but it's still a very big win for anyone out there that wants to build goblins in the near future. My next shiny new quarter coming in at number 9 is Crypt Rats. It's a 1/1 rat that costs 2 and a black. It has pay X, Crypt Rats deals X damage to each creature and each player, spend only black mana on X. This card can essentially be a board wipe on a body for black decks. On top of that, you can even use it to finish off your opponents too, since it deals damage to each player. This is a very flexible card that can come out early and really threaten your opponents. Your opponents might have to work around this and hesitate to play certain creatures. On top of that, black has plenty of ways to recur and reanimate creatures. That means that you can easily get Crypt Rats back to wipe the board again. Before its reprint in this set, Crypt Rats was starting to get around $2. With that kind of price, it was very difficult to include it in any kind of budget deck. But with its most recent reprint though, it's now just 10 cents. At that price, it's well within budget and can definitely be included in one of my decks. Again, this card definitely benefits more in a mono black deck. It can especially shine in a mono black deck that can really ramp and get a ton of mana into this. This truly can be a dangerous card in the right situation with the right deck. Up next, coming in at number 8, is Battle Screech. It's a sorcery that costs 2 white and it says create 2 1/1 bird creature tokens with flying, and you can flash it back by tapping 3 untapped white creatures you control. This can be a fantastic form of token production in the right deck. Essentially, it's 4 mana for 4 1/1 flyers. In the right deck, most of the time you're already going to have another white creature in play. Token builds are pretty much never short on having creatures. That means that you can tap that creature as well as the 2 birds that come into play to recast this. Also, you may be running a deck that can actually discard this too. And in that case, this could essentially be a free token production spell out of your graveyard. It's not going to be for every deck, but token decks can definitely use this effectively. Before this reprint, Battle Screech was all the way up to $5. At that price, it definitely wasn't a budget-friendly card. A deck that it could have fit into was my Trostani Discordant deck, but definitely not at that price. But with its reprint in Modern Horizons, its price has dropped all the way from $5 down to 19 cents. This is very much now a budget card that can easily be considered in any token build. I'm not saying that it's a shoe-in or a staple to fit in token decks, but it's definitely worth considering. 4 mana for 4 flying bodies is a pretty good rate, and if you're running Anthem effects like my Trostani deck does, they're definitely more of a threat. The next shiny new quarter coming in at number 7 is Squirrel Nest. It's an aura that enchants a land and it costs 1 green. It says enchanted land has tap, create a 1/1 green squirrel creature token. This can be a very effective token producer, especially in green that has plenty of ways to untap its lands. Once you're set up correctly, you can get multiple squirrels each turn out of this. While these squirrels only start off as 1/1s, they can make great chump blockers if you need them. And if you're building a token deck with some anthems and pump effects, these squirrels can actually become a big threat. And demolishing your opponents with an army of squirrels is a pretty hilarious thing to do. There's definitely some combo potential with this card as well. well. For example, the card Earthcraft goes infinite with this. Now, Earthcraft is actually over $50, so you're probably never going to see that combo in one of my decks. But there are definitely ways out there to abuse this effect and to make a ton of squirrels. Before this reprint, Squirrel Nest was hovering just around $1. Now again, at that price, that doesn't mean that it can't be used in a budget deck, but you really have to squeeze it in. After its reprint in Modern Horizons, it's all the way down to 11 cents. This is a much more manageable amount, and it can be easily included in budget decks. I'm definitely hoping that I can find the right place for this fantastic card in an upcoming deck. But now it's time to move on to number 6 with Rebuild. It's an instant that costs 2 and a blue, and it says return all artifacts to their owner's hands. And it also has cycling for 2. This is a very flexible card that can be used in a wide variety of ways depending on the deck that it's in. It can be used defensively to set back your opponents by returning their artifacts back to their hand. If your opponent's got a ton of mana rocks in play, this can really put them back. It can save you from something like a Blightsteel Colossus that might be charging at you. It can even prevent your opponents from comboing off with an artifact. But on top of that, you can even use this to benefit yourself too. If you're running a deck like Artifact Storm, you can bring back all of your artifacts back to your hand so that you can recast them. Regardless for what you're using this for only 3 mana, it's a pretty valuable effect. And on top of that, since it has cycling for 2, it's never a dead card in your hand. If you don't need it, you can just ditch it and get another card. It used to be a budget card, and its price started to really increase last year and ended up being around $1.42. Before that price increase, this was an easy include for my Joyride deck. At the time of this deck tech, its price was 32 cents. I'm happy to say that with this reprint in Modern Horizons, its price is even cheaper now at just 19 cents. This can be a fantastic card for pretty much any blue deck to consider no matter what their budget is. So whether you can use this card offensively or defensively, make sure that you keep it in mind. Next up, coming in at number 5 is Carnion Feeder. It's a 1/1 zombie for a black. It can't block, but it does have sacrifice a creature, put a +1/+1 counter on Carnion Feeder. This card is a fantastic include in pretty much any aristocrat style strategy. It's a free sacrifice outlet that only costs 1 mana. While it doesn't protect itself and it can't block for you, it can become a huge threat. And free sacrifice outlets are always going to be better than outlets that cost mana. Because with those types of decks, you need to be able to sacrifice anything and everything at a moment's notice. And at just 1 mana, this is an extremely efficient way to do so. It's a great early play as well as a late game play in those decks too. It used to be more budget friendly, but it recently started increasing in price to around $1.36. Its spike in price most likely was due to Teysa Karlov being printed. It's a fantastic addition to that deck, and it does show up in my list. In that deck, its price was around 67 cents at the time. But with its new reprint in Modern Horizons, it's all the way down to 20 cents. Even more so today now, it's a fantastic budget included in aristocrat style strategies. While it may not protect itself, it's a very cheap and efficient sacrifice outlet. And now it's time to move on to our 4th ranked card with Spore Frog. It's a 1/1 frog that costs a green. It says sacrifice Spore Frog, prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn. Essentially, this is a fog on a body, which is a fantastic effect. It's a cheap and effective way to deter your opponents from attacking you. It can definitely cause opponents to hesitate when it comes to attacking you because they don't want to swing out and waste their attack. You can even use this politically to save your opponent for a favor. And since this effect is on a creature, there are plenty of ways that you can bring this back and keep using it. There are a good amount of commanders out there that revolve around bringing creatures back from the graveyard. This is an incredible inclusion in those decks and can really shut down certain strategies. Recently, its price was around $2.30. It was definitely out of budget when I built my Regrowth deck, and I would have loved to include it. Being able to bring back a fog each turn for just 1 mana is extremely effective. Since it was reprinted in Modern Masters, its price has dropped all the way to 16 cents. So Spore Frog can definitely be included in my Regrowth deck now, as well as other decks that want that effect. This is definitely a card that can save you in a lot of situations, and it can really annoy your opponents. And I can't blame them, no one really likes losing to a 1/1 frog. But now let's get into our top 3. Coming in at 3rd place is Wald Blossoms. It's a 0/4 plant wall with Defender that costs 1 and a green. When it enters the battlefield, you draw a card. This is a very simple but extremely effective card. Drawing a card for just 2 mana and getting a body out of it is a great deal. On top of that, there are plenty of different decks that can abuse this enter the battlefield effect. If you can blink this, flicker it, or bring it back to your hand and recast it, you can get multiple draws out of it. A card like Elvish Visionary is very similar and sees even more play than this. But personally, most of the time I'd probably rather have a 0/4 Defender than a 1/1. Because on top of providing value, it can be a great blocker for you early on in the game. Most likely the reason that this sees less play than Elvish Visionary is probably because of its price. Before its recent reprint, it was around $1.50. One of the reasons that it might have spiked a little bit was because of Arcades. In that deck, it's very effective, being basically a 4/4 for 2 mana that draws you 2 cards. I was able to squeeze it in the deck, and at the time it was 85 cents. With the recent reprint, it's all the way down to 15 cents, which is very manageable. I imagine that with this price, it's going to see a lot more play than it already is. The amount of value that you get out of this for just 2 mana is pretty incredible. Up next in 2nd place is Regrowth. Regrowth is a sorcery for 1 and a green. It says return target card from your graveyard to your hand. This is a very simple and extremely effective card at a good cost. For just 2 mana, you can get back any card from your graveyard. Many decks are looking for effectively costed recursion pieces like this. This card can really get you back in a game by getting you a crucial piece that you lost. Whether that's a combo piece or a finisher, this card can really do a lot of work. Its price has been pretty steady around $1.70, which is pretty much too expensive to include in any of my budget decks. One of my decks that it really could have found a use in was Kamal Fist of Krosa. That deck definitely revolves around specific pieces that it needs to win. I even had to include the inferior version with Recollect. It does the exact same thing as Regrowth, but it costs 3 instead of 2. I'm happy to say that with this most recent reprint though, its price has dropped all the way to 21 cents. This is definitely a fantastic budget included in a lot of decks now. Cheap and efficiently costed recursion is very hard to find, and there are plenty of decks out there that really want a card like this. And finally, my number one pick for my favorite reprint out of this set is Factor Fiction. Factor Fiction is an instant that costs 3 and a blue. It says reveal the top 5 cards of your library, an opponent separates those cards into 2 piles, put 1 pile into your hand and the other into your graveyard. Personally, this is one of my favorite draw spells in Commander. For just 4 mana at instant speed, you can get a ton of value out of this. Separating these cards into 2 piles is a very hard thing for most opponents to do, and at the end of the day, there really isn't a right choice for them. This card helps you get the piece or pieces that you need for the situation that you're in. This card can also be used politically too. If one of your opponents is way ahead, you can give the decision to another player. That player might help themselves out by giving you an easy choice and giving you cards that help deal with that other opponent's stuff. If a board wipe is needed to set that opponent back, that player might help you out and just give you that in your best pile. Factor Fiction's price was starting to get over $1 and was recently around $1.33. A while back when I included it in my Feldergrift deck, it was around 49 cents. With the recent reprint, it's even more affordable today at just 28 cents. This is a fantastic budget-friendly include in pretty much any blue deck. So get out there and make your opponents make some really tough decisions with this. And with that, our show is coming to a close, but I really want to hear about your thoughts on these picks, so why don't you let me know in the comments below. And make sure that you're following us on social media for more updates and sneak peeks on future episodes. Links to our social media accounts can be found in the description. Also in the description below is a link to the Commander's Quarters Patreon page, and I just want to say a quick thank you to the patrons who have subscribed so far. There are many benefits to being a patron for the Commander's Quarters, including being able to vote on future Commanders for deck techs. There's even a general level tier where you get your own personalized deck tech dedicated to you. I truly couldn't do this without all of your support, so from the bottom of my heart, thank you. If you haven't already, make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel. And while you're at it, check out some of our other episodes on budget deck techs, Quest for Quarters episodes, Commander topics, and Creators Quarters. And with that, I'm out of here. Thanks again, and have a good one.